Hi, I'm Kristen, and today we're going to be discussing the breakdown of one molecule of glucose, and one molecule of palmitic acid, and how many ATP both of those yield. We're going to start off with the breakdown of glucose. It can be broken into three key steps, and I have here outlined the net ATP production for each of those steps. So we're just going to dive right in. The first step is glycolysis. You start out obviously with one molecule of glucose. In this process, 2 ADP and 2 phosphates combine to yield 2 ATP, and an NAD transforms into 2 molecules of NADH. Those are two important numbers to kind of remember, put in the back of your mind. We're going to use those later. And in this process, it comes out with 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, or pyruvate. Can kind of be used interchangeably. This process is very quick. It occurs and can sustain energy for about 6 to 10 seconds. So any of that quick speed work in athletics, so that quick lifting of the weight or whatnot. After that quick kind of burst of energy, other systems begin to take over. Luckily, we can work for more than 10 seconds. Those 2 pyruvates can then be converted into acetyl-CoA, which can then enter the Krebs cycle, which I have listed here. The transition from pyruvate to acetyl-CoA does produce 2 molecules of NADH, which again, put that in the back of your mind. The acetyl-CoA can enter the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle, with each cycle, can produce 3 molecules of NADH, 1 molecule of FADH2, and 1 ATP. That ATP is what we're looking for. Those molecules of NADH and FADH2 are electron transport molecules, which will help us in the electron transport chain. Perfect example of a redox reaction coming up. With each cycle, like I said, 3 and 1 and 1. Because there are 2 molecules of pyruvate, we're going to go through the cycle twice. Lots of numbers, so I have a running total. In glycolysis, way back, you have 2 ATP produced and 2 NADH. That conversion from the 2 pyruvate to the acetyl-CoA produces 2 NADH. And then we go through the Krebs cycle twice, producing 6 NADH, 2 ATP, and 2 FADH2s, which gives us a total of 4 ATP so far, 10 NADH, and 2 FADH2. That 10 and 2 at the end, those are the numbers and the molecules that we're going to take along into the electron transport chain, which is next. The molecules of NADH and FADH release their hydrogen ion into the intracellular membrane right up here, which those hydrogen ions then come back into the matrix via ATP synthase. They come back and foster ADP coming together with a phosphate, producing ATP. It's widely known that 1 molecule of NADH can produce upwards of 3 molecules of ATP, and 1 molecule of FADH2 can produce upwards of 2 molecules of ATP. So that's a conversion factor we're going to use right now. It is on the high end, so essentially a very efficient cell. We'll use those numbers. So we have another tally right here. On the left, we have all of those review from glycolysis and the Krebs cycle. Our new numbers are from the electron transport chain. 30 ATP from NADH, because as stated earlier, we took 10 NADH with us from the Krebs cycle. 10 times 3 equals 30, because 1 NADH can produce 3 ATP. Similar for FADH, we brought 2 with us. Each one can produce 2 ATP. 2 times 2 is 4. add all of those up and you have 38 ATP, which seems pretty good, pretty efficient for the human body. As discussed earlier, glycolysis can only work for a short amount of time, that 10 seconds. After that 10 seconds, the Krebs cycle and electron transport chain kind of take over. They can work for about up to 30 minutes of mild to moderate exercise with 1 molecule of glucose. We're now going to go into the breakdown of palmitic acid, which is a fatty acid. I have it pictured right here below. It goes essentially the same or a very similar process as that of glucose. It is going to try and undergo that Krebs cycle. Before it can do that, it has to go through a process called beta oxidation. And this process essentially breaks up down and oxidizes the molecules into 2 carbon subunits. So it breaks it up into groups of 2, just like that. And with that breakdown, it forms acetyl-CoA with each breakdown. This is important because with each breakdown, you get 1 molecule of FADH2 and 1 molecule of NADH. With a conversion factor, slightly different here, of FADH being 1.5 and NADH being 2.5. You get a total of 27 because there are 7 groups of acetyl-CoA that can occur from this molecule. Adding all those up, you get 28 ATP. It does take 1 ATP for this process to kind of be initialized. So you end up with a total of 27. Good number to remember. Once you have all of these broken down into acetyl-CoA, it can then enter the Krebs cycle just like before. Same picture, same cycle. With the cycle, the acetyl-CoA comes in. You get 3 molecules of NADH through each cycle, 1 ATP, and 1 FADH2. Because you're doing this cycle several times, because there are several molecules of acetyl-CoA, I'm going to sum it up. You essentially get 10 molecules of ATP per cycle using the conversion, as stated before, of 2.5 ATP for NADH and 1.5 for FADH2. You're going to undergo it. I have this running total here because it is a lot of math again. Remember that beta oxidation, 27 ATP. Krebs cycle, you get 10 ATP per cycle. You'll do it 8 times. You get a total of 80 for a grand total of 107 ATP. Wow, that is a lot. This can be useful as a fuel source during light to moderate intensity. Similar to that of glucose, just lasts a little bit longer, same about 30 minutes. There are 3 requirements for all of these processes to take place. First off, there has to be available NADH or FADH2 for these to occur. I said those a lot. You need them for the Krebs cycle, you need them for the electron transport chain, and all of that to reoccur. You also need the presence of oxygen in tissue. As oxygen is the last acceptor in the electron transport chain, you do need that. And you do need enough enzymes and mitochondria available for all of this to occur at the proper rate. These requirements become important with activity because as activity lengthens or increases in intensity, you may not have enough oxygen in your tissues for these to take place. In that case, other processes will kind of take over because everything kind of overlaps in the body and somehow it all works together. With all that said, we have all of the references I used, lots of videos and websites. hopefully all of that makes sense. And that's it.